So when properly sizing a bracelet, I'm going to tell you what factors to consider, okay? So first, if you can, we want to make sure that we have a wrist measurement. If we're doing a custom piece, we want to make sure that it's the desired fit for them. So there's going to be, if we need to have the person we're designing for or making a bracelet for, we would have to ask them to help us determine what size is the best for them by first measuring their wrist. It has to be a very flexible measuring tape or string, okay? So if they have anything like this, or if you know them in person and can measure their wrist with measuring tape, that's the best. You can also use a string and mark when you put it around the wrist, and you snugly, not snug, but not too tight and not too loose, okay? We want to know about the wrist size, okay? So if you're making a custom piece, we want to make sure that our customer can measure their wrist, okay? And that is going to be how you're going to get to be able to design or make a bracelet for them in that desired length, okay? We want to make sure that when you are constructing your bracelet, that you understand that there are so many tools that you can use, okay? You can use, which is the one that I highly recommend, is a measuring cone, okay? Now, this comes in a PDF file. You can get it, and one of our moderators can let you know where I have it available. It is not mine. We're going to give credit to Olala Journals. And when you purchase the file, this is what you get. And you have your cone. Now, to put this together, you would have to put this on a cardstock. And what I did is I just put that packing tape, okay? The packing tape to kind of laminate it, or you can laminate it. This is going to be a game changer, okay? Game changer with your measuring tools. You can go off of this, and with time, you are going to be able to get an accurate measurement just with this, or even just a measuring tape. You don't even need the cone, but for beginners and people that struggle, even I would still need this to make sure that it is a great tool, okay? So these are available from Olala Journals at the Betsy place, and you can find it underneath my description. There is a non-virtual address that you can access that will have this listed there, okay? So again, I didn't design it. It's the one I use, and it's really, really good, okay? So once you consider, like, if we're going to talk about actually making a bracelet for someone, we want to make sure that we consider if they like it snug, if they look like a comfortable fit, or if it's a loose fit. So let's say someone's wrist measures 7 inches, okay? Let's say their wrist measures 7 inches, and they say, I like my bracelets kind of like a snug fit. The best way, and this is where you start writing notes down. It's very important to write notes. So for a snug fit, you want to add about 1/4 to 1/2 inch more. So you want to make that bracelet. So if she's a 7 inch on her wrist, or he, and they like a snug fit, you want to make sure that you add 1/4 of an inch. I mean, a fourth, yes, 1/4, 0.25, or half, okay, 0.5 inches on the length. Okay, does that make sense? If they like a comfortable fit, something that is comfortable, that is not going to be too tight, too snug, we're going to recommend that you add 3/4 of an inch, 0.75 inches, right? Or 1 inch for a comfortable fit. Now, for a loose fit, kind of like what I like mine because I stack a lot, you know, some bracelets. So I like a very, very loose bracelet. You are going to add about 1.25 inches. Okay? 1.25 inches to that size. This may be something that, you know, you can work with. And I suggest that what you do to practice is, for beginners, find someone, a friend in person, someone that you can actually make a bracelet for, and just measure their wrist. That's all you need. Okay? Once you measure their wrist, then you can apply what we're going to learn today. That's how you practice, and do it for certain people in your family, for yourself. Do it for your husband. This will help you with the practice and to getting to know your bead sizes, your string, and everything. We're going to go into the bead size and everything. So the second thing that we have to take into consideration is also the bead size. Okay, yes, the bead size has a lot to do with it, and we're going to actually physically show you. I'm going to show you how much of a difference it could be. Okay, so don't forget, your note taking is really important. Large beads that are 8 mm or more make the bracelet feel tighter. Okay, so requiring a little more of the length. The reason is because when you use larger beads, so I have an example here. Okay, when you use larger beads, it takes away from the inner diameter. Okay, so that means that when you see a bracelet, this is in here is the inner diameter, right? So here it reduces because you have bigger beads. Even if you're doing a certain size, you have to take into consideration that bigger beads are going to decrease, right? Make our inner circle in here tighter, smaller, okay? So we don't want to make the mistake of making our bracelet small, right? And that it's not going to fit, even when we already have the measurement. So I'm going to show you how that looks like, okay? So 8 mm beads, larger beads, make the bracelet. Yes, so you add more. Yes, Harper. So let me show you how a measuring tape, even if you didn't have a cone, how the different, the difference is, and I'll compare it. Flat beads, so anything that is flat, or smaller beads, like smaller, closer to the skin, like small, will may not need as much adjustment. Okay, they may not need much adjustment, which means that when you measure it laying down like this, it may not decrease, or once it's wrapped around the wrist, okay, once it's closed as a bracelet, it may not need any adjustment at all. And chunky or irregular beads, when you do a mix of things, may require more space for comfort, okay, because you don't have one specific size and you have different size beads, so you're never going to really know unless you design it out, plan it out, and measure and compare to the cone. Because as you can see, when you measure it laying flat, you're just doing the length of the design. That's what I call the length of your design. So if you ever hear me in a presentation or a demo, or I'm doing something, I always say your design should measure this much. I don't say the whole bracelet should measure. I say the design, okay? Because that's how I determine how much of the design I'm going to do. And what my end result is going to be is the bracelet size itself, okay? So when it comes to your beads, and you're creating something, I know a lot of people have seen these and may have some of these boards. How many of you have some of these boards? You may also have some of these, or the really pretty cute ones, okay? So some of these, as you can see, already have measurements. So here it's saying that this is an 8.5, right? 8.5, and the measurement right there. So what I suggest, okay, and this is just a suggestion for everyone, I suggest that you take your time, and if you're going to be using the board, to actually suggest that you take your time, and if you're going to be using the board, to actually do bracelets without the charms, without any add-ons or anything. Just do a bracelet of 10 mm, 8 mm, 6 mm. If you don't work with 4 mm, then don't. But 10, 8, and 6, okay, which is a lot of the bracelet sizes that people like. So play with your board, get to know your board, get to see how many of those beads fit around these, and then you might have a problem with getting all of these beads when you design. Do you see how that bead doesn't lay in there right into that little groove that it has? So when designing your bracelet, and I think this is something that Erin asked, sometimes you're doing a pattern. Sorry, you might not be able to see that. So sometimes you're doing a pattern and you can't quite fill it, or your space for your next bead. Like right here, I'm doing 12 and a 10, 12, 10, 12, 10, right? So if I am designing something and I don't get to complete my pattern, then that's when your spacers, you can add a focal bead to complete it. So let's say there's a space like this, and my next bead, here, I'm done here, and there's like a space like this, right? We are going to be adding, you can add the spacers in between. You have to work with your design to make sure that you reach the design or length that you want, okay? So in regards to all of that, spacers may be needed for you to complete, but for you to work with your board and get to know your board, please make sure you take the time to put your beads, arrange the different sizes, and create and see, oh, okay, so this one is, this amount of beads, but also measure flat. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so this bracelet here, if I put this bracelet, which is the one that I put around here, and it's supposed to be an 8.5. Right here it tells me it's an 8.5. And do you see the pattern that I have right there? So that is My pattern fit perfectly. Okay, if I put spacers on here, what's going to happen? It's going to make my bracelet larger, right? So you have to take into consideration, if you want to put spacers and you're laying it out, designing it, what I recommend is you laying it over here. So see how this says 8.5, right? This is supposed to be an 8.5. Well, if I come here and I lay it on my board, guess what's happening? If you look, okay, I have it centered right there. Okay, there's the middle point, right? My bracelet is actually more than 9 inches laying flat. Okay, do you see that? There's the 4.5 and the 4.5 on this side. So that gives me 9 inches. Are you able to see that? It's really important that you see where it's at. Okay, laying flat, this measures 9 inches. But my board tells me it's going to give me an 8.5. Okay, so if I'm over here putting this over here with these big beads, and I'm like, it's gonna be an 8.5. My customer says, I want an 8.5. Sure, I'll make you one. I put it here, I close it, don't even check it. I trust the process, right? 8.5, that's over here is fine. But what if you don't use this board? What if you say, oh, okay, 8.5, which a lot of people do. Okay, so 8.5, that means that I'm going to do up to there. What's going to happen? Your bracelet is going to be smaller. So never measure it laying flat. Okay, but guess what? You're going to come to do this and you're going to do 8.5 and you're going to say, oh, I have my 8.5. You're going to cross check with your cone. You're going to come here and look where it landed. Do you see? What does that say?
8.
That says 8. Because these are big. Okay, do you see that? Right? Okay. So if my customer tells me it's an 8.5 and they want an 8.5, would I be able to make them an 8.5 if I put these beads here? Just like this, without checking it or even laying it flat? Do you see how the laying flat process doesn't work, right? So this means that this bracelet is actually an 8. An 8. So I would have to add more, like 2 more beads to make this an 8.5. But if I'm using something else, so if I were to come and do a 6 millimeter, okay, where's the 8? Oh, it's over here, sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this is an 8 millimeter bracelet, right? I mean, beads, 8 millimeter beads. So I made it 9 inches. Okay, well, my husband did. It measures 9 inches, the same as the other one. Okay, this measures 9 inches, the same as the other one, which is this one. Do you remember how much this one was on my board, on my cone? So we're going to come here. Do you see that? That one's 8.5. This is 8 millimeter. This is a mixed bead. Okay, so this is 8.5. We're gonna do the 6 mm now. This is a 9-inch, the same as the other ones, but this is a 6 millimeter one. I'm gonna measure it. This one is a little below, a little bigger than the 8.5. Okay, like that.
Like 18,
like in between 8.5 and 8.75. So it made it just a slight bigger. Okay, and then we're going okay, so here, yes, 8. So the board is actually accurate if you use 8 mm. Yes. And so you can't use all types of beads. And this is a 4 mm. This one, because it's smaller, it's flatter, this gave me the 9 inches. Okay, this one gave me the exact 9 inches as it lays flat. Okay, so this is a 9-inch length. So it gave me very close to my 9 inches on this. Okay, and then this is the 9 inches here on the board. So it's very, very close. Look, it's like right there, but it's like closed, very close to the inner part of it. See? So this one's 9. So the only ones that you're going to add, if you're measuring it flat, okay, if you're measuring it flat and it's it is 9 inches flat, you know that this one here is 8, right? Right here, 8. So let's say you want it to make it a 9, an actual 9. You would need to add more beads for it to come to have the same size. But yes, the 8 mm, these boards are used to doing the 8 millimeter. So the boards are using the standard size bead that everybody wants to use. Okay? Awesome relaxation. Yes. So if you are someone that likes to do designs, now these you can lay out your beads, and I would do a bracelet in 8 mm and then measure it on your cone. But before closing it, measure it laying flat. That way you have an idea of how many beads and what length it's laying flat, and then compare it to your cone. That way you know that when you use this board, because it's more of a really pretty for display kind of, but I see people design on it, and I sometimes go, I hope they know what size they're gonna get. Okay, because these were meant to actually be more for designing and putting things together, but also displaying. All right, so now we're going to go into another factor that you have to consider when it comes to handmade jewelry, handmade bracelet and sizing, is the findings that you're going to add. if you are going to do one of these, okay, and like for instance, this is a flat design. Okay, so it doesn't add into the inner diameter, or it, you know, it lays flat on the wrist, right? Thank you so much, Bonnie. What's going to happen is this is going to be pretty accurate if you lay it, if you measure it this way, because look, what's going to happen is this is from here to here. I'm going to measure it, and I had pre-measured already. Okay, we're going to measure the design part. Remember what I said at the beginning? There is a design. Okay, so this gives me about 6.5 of my design, which is this part. The design is from here to here. I'm not counting spacers and anything like that. 6.5. Okay. I did a 6.5 design because I wanted this bracelet to be obviously a little bigger, and I had to take into consideration the size of my spacer, the size of my wire protector, okay, the size of my split ring, and the lobster clasp that I was going to use. Okay, so when you're doing a beading wire bracelet and you're going to add an extension to it, or you're going to add lobster clasp, you have to make sure that you count that length into the total length of your bracelet. Okay, so in my case, I have an 8-inch from here, from the end of the lobster clasp all the way to the end of that split ring. Okay, so this is a total of 8 inches. So when I bring it on my, and I close it without the, you know, tail chain, give me 1 second, without the tail chain, and I bring it down here, it is very accurate. You see? That's 8 right there. And the reason why it's accurate is because it's flat. So there's nothing that is lifting it off. So it's flat. So this is measuring right at 8, what it says right here. So again, it only applies, that is going to be an accurate fit if the person wants an 8-inch bracelet and you're doing a flat design. You have to make sure that you count in the length of what this added from here to here. Okay, so if my design was 6.5 from here to here, and I have a total of 8 inches, what's happening? It's adding, too early for math, it is adding a total of 1.5 inches. Do you see how it is right in the middle? So so the middle part is actually on the 8. So on the middle part is the 8. So that's what you're going to consider. So if you wanted to say you wanted to make this smaller, but because this is a crochet necklace and I can't uncrochet it and redo it, I could, but I wouldn't want to fix it for someone like that and do another bracelet. That's a whole other work. What I can do is I can get smaller size split rings. So if I use that size, and instead maybe I can use this size and a smaller clasp. So that would take a little bit off. So make it a little smaller, okay? And then if you're using these or making them to sell, then you can add that extension chain so that you don't have to worry about the extra length. Okay, so the lobster clasp or toggle clasps, they require extra space for movement. Okay, so what I do is I really like to add on the lobster clasp like a little one, extra one, so that it has movement. And you also have to take into consideration any crimp bead size or anything. So what you can do is you can lay it flat, size or anything. So what you can do is you can lay it flat and put them together this way just to give you an approximate of, oh, this is going to be, I don't have my lobster clasp, but you would put the lobster clasp or the, you know, everything that you are going to use, and then you measure, and then you'll say, oh, okay, so this will add 1.5 inches or an inch once it's completely all done. So from here to here, remember how it said it added about 1.5 inches to my 6.5 design? That gave me 8 inches, correct? And because it's flat, I didn't have to worry about it not fitting because it is a flat design. Okay, the bigger the bead, it takes away from that inner diameter.
You see them? Be sharp.
Now I'm going to go over some of the bead bracelet sizes. Okay, this is something that I kind of go by, and it could be different for you, or it also depends in the area that you're in, what works the best for you. So here we go. Okay, but for me, 6.5 to 7 is small. Medium is 7 to 7.5. Large would be a 7.5 to 8, and extra large would be 8 and plus, you know, 8.5. So anything, you know, then we can go into, you know, plus size. It can be anywhere from 8.5 and up. Okay. So those are kind of what I have categorized my sizes in. And it helps me a lot when I am doing a description, when you're describing your bracelets on your page or, you know, on your post. It is important for you to let the customer know that this bracelet is, if you know the exact same size, you know, the exact size that you have. And this goes out to our friends that are in our pop-ups. Okay, and that you're doing your own lives, and that you are, you know, promoting your own items, and that you are selling your bracelets. It is so important, and I cannot emphasize this enough. It is so important that sizing is something that you work at. Okay, that you take your time to actually do your research and practice it and perfect it, you know, and get it to where you're going to be able to make bracelets that people go, this is, you're going to get those calls, it fit perfectly, thank you very much, you know, and that's going to, in return, create loyalty from the people that actually buy from you. Okay, so if you take something away from this class today, is that sizing. And you can be the, you know, great designer, and you can say design and make beautiful items, but if your sizing is not correct, that can be one of the major reasons why someone would not want to purchase from you again. Okay, so take that time, take the time to invest. It's not too much to invest in, you know, something like this. Another thing too is when you're doing your descriptions or you're adding the tail chain, make sure you let them know how big your bracelet is completely closed. So this one completely closed is 8 inches, right? So in my description, I would say this bracelet size is 8 inches, okay? And it extends to, and then you don't want to make it where they put it at the all the way at the end, okay? Because a lot of people don't like to wear their bracelets with this big, huge extension like that. So go about here. You can add, and it has a 2-inch extension. If you put plus, it has a 2-inch extension. That gives the customer an idea that that bracelet is going to extend quite a bit, okay? But if you're actually wanting to put a specific size, do it to about where there's something hanging, okay? Because a lot of people don't like it when it goes all the way over here and there's like a big, huge, it takes away from the design, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. So if you go here and it says, and all the way there, this is about a 9.25, okay? So in my description, or how, when I am actually, selling these, then I would put this bracelet is a size 8 to 9.25. Okay, because that gives them a little bit of a dangle in the back. Okay, another thing that is really important in your description when you are describing, especially if you're doing a live sale, pop-up, in-person event, when you're talking about your sizing, you want to make sure that you decide how you want to present the bracelet. Do you want to present it as this bracelet fits size, the wrist size from this to this? Then that goes into a whole other thing, because wrist size, in reality, if it's an 8 when it's completely closed, it can fit a wrist size of a 7.5. Okay, 7.5. And if it closes, if the longest it is open, that it opens up to 9.25 inches, wrist size, I wouldn't put 9.25. You can say, and wrist size up to 9 or 8.75 wrist size. Okay, there was a confusion with a customer once that said, you said the bracelet fit. The bracelet was a 7-inch. And I said, yes. And it had the extension and everything, or it didn't have an extension. It was a 7, right? So she said it was so tight on me, and and she bought it off the shop. And I said, well, what's your wrist size? She says it's a 7. And I said, did you read the description? I say it fits wrist size 6.5. Wrist size 6.5, up to 6.5 or 6.75. If she was a 7 and that bracelet is a 7, it's going to be super tight. Okay, so wrist size, fits wrist size is very different than bracelet size. Wrist size, meaning your wrist size that you measure, that is just the circumference of it. Like if you grab your measuring tape and you measure, and okay, so here is my husband. So this is his fits wrist size. Okay, he would look for something that is
7.
a 7. Well, his wrist size is less than a 7, but he likes his very, very close. Okay,
I
so
like loose.
¿dónde están tus pulseras? So his wrist size that is like less than 7 inches. When I make him bracelets, he likes them to be right at 7. Okay, so this is a 6 millimeter bracelet I made him. It's a 7, so when he puts that on, póntela. Okay, do you see how it's very close to his wrist? So even if I wanted to put a finger right in there, it's stretching the bracelet. So he likes that. He doesn't like it very loose. Okay, so that is the size that I make him. And then this one is okay. Do you see this one here? How it has the pea shoe? It brings it up. Okay, so this one is a 7, like very close 7. En la misma, because we have different size. Okay. All right. You see this one? This one's tighter. And his wrist over there is skinnier. Also have to consider that. Did they put their bracelet on this side or that side? Because look at this one here. And now it's the 7, very tight 7.
Okay, yeah.
But if he puts it here, look.
Oh, what? I don't know that.
Yeah. So you see?
What the heck?
It's loose.
Yeah.
So we don't have the same wrist size. Okay, so sometimes people say, oh, this is too tight. Well, there's always going to consider even the swelling. You know, anything that is going to be, yes, the cone is the best resource. I know that some say, no, I'm going to measure it laying flat. Do that. But I'm telling you, the cone is the best. And I hope that this class has been informative for everyone, whether you've been doing this for a little bit or have been doing it for a long time. Is there a general size to make it if we don't know their size? That's a hard one. In order to assure it fits, if you want to give it as a gift, I would recommend that you do an adjustable. If you do not know the person's size or you have no one that they can measure their wrist for you, I would make a general size. I would make it like a 7-inch bracelet with an extension. If you know they're built, if they're built like me, I would do a 7.5 with an extension. If they're small, if you know they're built, I would do a 6.5 with an extension. Okay, I would not even do a beaded bracelet because you run the risk of it not fitting properly. And but small usually is 6.5 to 7. Medium for me, and these are for me. If you're going to give it to someone that you don't know the size and you want to gift something, I would do something like, like a beading wire bracelet with an extension, macramé bracelet that has the adjustable slider, or something that you can add extensions. Or there's another one that is this kind that would be a slider. Okay, and the type of string that you use is important. If it stretches with time, remember that bracelet might get loose with time. So that's where you would have to work with the different strings, okay? That is it for the class. I'm sorry I took over the break, but I hope that you enjoyed the class. And thank you for everyone. Oh, sorry, I dropped something. Thank you for everyone being here.